Okay, getting close. 1 minute.
Places. Take your places, right?
There we go.
Let's make sure I got all my stuff here. Did I forget my daggone pen again? Richard, how do I do that every month? I managed to leave my pen sitting in the middle of my desk.
Well, I forgot something in my car myself.
Do you need a pen?
No, I'm good.
So we say the TV.
Hey, there's no heckling that I told you to either.
Yeah, I need reading glasses. I can see it from about.
Oh, here it is. Tarrant County, Texas Gov. Tarrant County, Texas Gov. KEIS, that's what he's talking about. That's what he was thinking.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay, it's 6 p.m. I'm going to call this meeting of Tarrant County Emergency Services District Number 1 to order. We will start with an invocation by Chief Shelley.
Pray with me. Heavenly Father God, thank you for this day and for all that you provide for us each and every day. I thank you for each of these board members here tonight, God, and for their voluntary efforts to serve this district and to look out for its well-being. We ask you to guide us tonight through this meeting, provide wisdom and discernment as decisions affecting the ESD and its residents are made, and just be with our crews in the field, God. Watch over them, watch over their families while they're away, and guide them back to them safely. We pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Okay. At this point, we will go to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now do the same for the Texas flag.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Okay, item 4, presentations. First one is a presentation of a proclamation recognizing all members of Tarrant County ESD 1 and surrounding areas for EMS Week 2026. Chief Shelley?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll ask Chief Brown to come forward and accept this proclamation after I finish reading it. Whereas emergency medical services personnel serve a vital role in safeguarding the health, safety, and well-being of the residents of Tarrant County ESD number 1, and whereas EMS professionals are often the first line of care in emergencies, providing rapid assessment, life-saving interventions, and compassionate medical treatment to those in need, and whereas the dedication, skill, and professionalism of paramedics, emergency medical technicians, and all EMS personnel ensure the delivery of high-quality pre-hospital care across the district service area, serving approximately 55,000 residents and protecting over 25,000 structures. And whereas EMS personnel work in coordination with fire departments, hospitals, and the Tarrant County Regional Communications Center to provide seamless and effective emergency response services. Whereas EMS professionals demonstrate unwavering commitment, often working in high stress and hazardous conditions while maintaining the highest standards of care, integrity, and service to the community. And whereas National Emergency Medical Services Week provides an opportunity to recognize and honor the contributions of EMS personnel and to raise awareness of their critical role in public safety and healthcare systems. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the Board of Commissioners of Tarrant County Emergency Services District Number 1 hereby recognize May 17th through 23rd as National EMS Week, and that all residents are encouraged to join in honoring the dedication, service, and sacrifice of Tarrant County ESD 1 EMS professionals who serve our community with excellence each and every day. Mr. President, would you like to present this? Sure.
Come on.
logo in the picture. Into the middle.
I didn't count the photos. Put the podium right there either. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. Thank you. Item B, we will have our April 2026 financial report by our CFO, Jen.
That's me. So the administrative team was heavily involved in data collection for the audit during the month of April. The audit was the first week of May. And gathering data from records that were not your own was a bit of a challenge. But thanks to Tiffany and Alicia, they both helped me get what documents we could for the audit. They completed it, and they will continue doing a single audit and any other follow-up questions throughout the month of May. So in my May report, I'll have an update on that. Tyler Technologies continues. We are still gathering data for them, taking trainings. They have included 5-hour meetings every single day for Alicia and I, 5 days a week.
Wow.
Initially, they asked for a 40-hour commitment, and there was no way that the two of us could still do our regular jobs and that. So it's been a challenge this week, learning to incorporate those meetings in with our daily activity, but we're making progress. We saw some of the stuff come out today, like the chart of accounts and what it's going to look like and those kind of things. That was really neat to see the work we've done and how it's coming out. The go live date has been delayed about a week just because of the audit. I was committed to the auditors while they were here, so I wasn't unable to attend some of those meetings. So maybe still mid-October, but likely early November for the go live for Tyler. I submitted the final ARPA reimbursement of $124,000 on April 27th, and I'm still waiting for approval for that from the ARPA folks. The large purchases this month included land acquisition, quarterly payments for our contract agencies, the first payment to Still and Freeman, and the tax roll summary, as well as the Lakeside Annex election fees were due this past month. And on this page, I broke out the monthly expenses a little bit more for a little bit more detail. I anticipate that will change monthly depending on what expenses were, so you guys have a broad overview of that. And in saying that, if there's any reports that you can think of that we want to build into Tyler based on expenses or revenue or any of those things that you want to see specifically, email me, because we're allowed to build pretty much anything we want. So we've already come up with some, but with all of your knowledge and what you would like to see. So,
The report that you were requesting previously, Tyler, that's a canned report for them.
Oh,
so
perfect.
that one will be very easy for us.
yeah, they have in their system today, I believe it's a little over 300 reports that are already built, but if we want anything specific to us, then they're willing to incorporate them.
Perfect.
That's that.
I would just add my thanks to Jen and the rest of the admin staff on the audit. It was a ton of work. They were on site 3 full days, and the single audit they're coming back to is specific to the ARPA agreements. So it's a lot. There are definitely areas for us to be better, to see that process unfold and what their expectations are, and being able to prepare for those next year when we're fully accountable for what's in the audit. That will help us out tremendously. Some things that we can put in place to make our controls a little better, and at the same time, try to be as efficient as we can on things. So they also have assured me that once the audit is complete, we will schedule them on a regular board agenda for them to come and give a summary report to you guys.
Very cool.
Do we have a target date on when that's gonna happen?
2 to 3 months,
2 to
I
3
believe,
months.
was what they anticipated. We had to sign a interim agreement with the old auditor to go pull data to give to the new auditor. They were not willing to just provide the data. We had to pay them $2,500 to find the data.
That was yesterday.
So we got that dealt with
No,
yesterday.
that was our CPA. This was Weaver.
Weaver
That's what I meant.
that we used before.
Yeah,
Mhm.
okay.
So we got that done yesterday, so that allows the wheels of the audit to continue moving forward. So more to come as we hear more.
Okay. You know, we got I guess no standard conflict of interest kind of sheet that they wanted us to fill out. So I had some questions on that, but I never heard back from the auditor on
Okay.
that.
Let us follow up on that
Okay.
because I'm not sure.
I have a question too. I wanna go back, why, okay, I just wanna get some clarity on why we had to pay, okay. I just want some clarity on why we had to pay them to get our stuff. What was that about?
That they came across yesterday that they wanted the figures to release the fixed assets only, because we don't have any of those documentations here. I looked in paper files, scanned files, we don't have any of those, but Weaver does have them, and that was their fee.
Okay, but so Weaver is the company that we were using for auditors.
Previously.
And so we paid them to do the audit.
Yes.
But now we had to pay them to get our results from them. Is that normal?
It wasn't to get the results, it was specific data that the current auditors were requesting, and the fee was for their employee time to do the research and find those specific numbers or documents for
That
them.
were hours that they had already done.
Correct.
It's like an open records request type thing.
Yeah. That's probably the best way to compare it would be to an open records request, and if it's an extensive research item, then we're allowed to charge a fee for that employee time and for any extensive copying or whatever that has to be done.
Okay.
So that's probably the best comparison that I can give you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Jen, and thank you for the work you did on the audit.
Yes, thank you, Jen.
And Alicia and
Yeah.
Tiffany.
Absolutely. Okay, item 5, Board of Commissioners comments and announcements. Is there any comments, questions, announcements from any of the board?
Did we want to do presentation C?
Let's do presentation C. I'm sorry, yes.
No worries.
We're going to move back to item 4, presentation C, which is presentation on Tarrant County ESD 1, progress made in FY '26 toward the service enhancement recommendations identified in the Fitch study that was completed and presented in FY '25.
Thank you, sir. The board received the Fitch study back in June last year, so almost a year ago, following about a year of research and preparation and data collection. As you're well aware, the study identified several recommendations for improvement of services across the ESD, and at the request of some of the board members, we have compiled some slides that will give you that information, and then some of the ones that we're still working towards. So the first recommendation was to adopt a reserve fund policy of 25% of revenue. We are currently obligated to maintain a 90-day operating reserve fund. We had discussed during the strategic planning workshop a goal of moving towards maintaining a 180-day reserve fund in the future, and we are continuing to move in that direction. Current reserves meet the recommended reserve fund of 90 days. We're probably a little above that in all comparisons, but some of those operating reserves, and I've explained this in conversation with some of you, but all of our revenues come in and they go into the tax pool operating reserves, and then as it's time to pay bills, make payroll, what have you, we move funds as necessary. So we're maximizing the interest earned on those tax pool accounts. And so while when you look at the tax pool accounts, those numbers are bigger, just please keep in mind that that is also our operating revenue in especially that operating reserve fund that we move over as needed.
Making this change, just anecdotally, what's the dollar difference between a 25% reserve versus a 180-day reserve? Not exact.
So
just kind of order of magnitude. What the
top of
difference
my head, you're a $25 million budget estimate going into 27. So if you're looking at roughly a quarter of that, you're about $6 million. So a goal of being somewhere around 12 long term. As we are continuing to build and add assets and open stations, that's going to take longer, obviously, to move in that direction. But it's completely influenced by what our sales tax does, what property values do, and so forth. So, as we talked about in the strategic planning workshop, if we have excess in sales tax above what our projections are, the recommendation staff made to the board was that we can move that into reserves and or use it to pay down debt or to take care of one-time capital expenses, and we would just address those as we encounter them, with the plan being to move that money into the reserves initially, and then as needs arise, deal with them directly.
So 180-day reserve fund is
Probably around 12 and a
12
half would be,
okay.
but would be what that number would be long-term. Yes, sir. Any other questions on this recommendation? Okay. The second one here is address challenges with ISO and insurance coverage for citizens. The items marked by Fitch were to build 3 stations in Eagle Mountain, Whiskey Flats, and the Lake Worth Lakeside area. Staff a 3-person engine at Eagle Mountain and Whiskey Flats, and staff select tankers 24/7. So actions taken thus far: we purchased land for the Eagle Mountain North Station. Design started yesterday. Technically, design started several weeks ago. The first meeting with the contractors was yesterday. Temporary facility was leased and is operating since December in Whiskey Flats, and land has been purchased for the future home of a permanent Whiskey Flats station. Land for Lakeside Fire Station has been verbally committed to by the City of Lakeside as being available to us in a donated fashion for a station in that area. We are currently staffing our fire engines with 4 personnel and never less than 3 at all 4 of our operating stations, and our water tenders are also always staffed with 1 fire engineer to operate and drive that equipment. We're awaiting direction from the board on preferred funding mechanism for construction of the remaining fire stations. We have a purchase and replacement plan in place on our fleet, and with our 4-3 staffing on the fire engines and the constant engineer staffing on the tankers, we do not have any additional staffing needs for those vehicles per the plan. Water tenders are also being purchased and replaced per the replacement schedule, and no additional staffing is required there either. Any question on those?
No, but I would add on the policy actions taken, what we've done in Rendon, even though that wasn't part of the plan
Sure.
or recommendation, it'd be good just to have it in our notes. So
You bet.
remember we've accomplished that too.
You bet. Absolutely. We can make a note to go back and add that, so we'll have it. Okay, the next recommendation was to fund 100% of the EMS program with a total of 9 ambulances, and their recommendation was assuming billing responsibility with an estimated cost recovery of $1 million plus the ASPP funds, which is a state indigent care program that we'll be eligible for to recoup some of our expenses related to patients who are private pay and don't have insurance. So we have fully funded ambulances in Eagle Mountain, the Lake Worth Lakeside area, and 2 ambulances in Rendon. We have signed a contract with a third-party billing service to do all of our ambulance billing, and Chief Brown will speak to our progress on that during the EMS update tonight. We are also partially funding ambulance service through our service contracts with Azle, Benbrook, Crowley, and Roanoke. Azle Ambulance District has been reduced and is now covered by the Lakeside Ambulance, and Azle's continuing to provide paramedic first response to that area. Everman and Kennedale are doing the same down south. Our Rendon ambulances are providing the transport services for those areas, and those 2 agencies provide the first response units. 5-year plan calls for addition of ambulances in Whiskey Flats and Briar. Future ambulances that will be considered based on call load and density and other factors such as that would be the Whiskey Flats East area, which is currently covered by the Crowley Fire Department. The possibility of adding a second ambulance in the southern part of Eagle Mountain as the population and the call volume increase, And then we'll just always be continuously monitoring our stats and our responses. And the big data point that we watch closely with ambulance is called unit hour utilization. And what that is a factor of is the availability of that ambulance. How often is it available for an emergency? And when that factor starts being up above 0.3, then we have to start being concerned that that ambulance is taxed as far as availability for additional calls. We're not currently operating in that capacity anywhere, so we'll continue to watch it. But we know Lakeside needs a full-time ambulance. Having it in Lake Worth is roughly 12 to 15 minutes faster than it being out in Eagle Mountain and trying to get to those areas. So that agreement with the city of Lake Worth is definitely helping us in response times.
But not helping Hazel as much as if it were in Lakeside.
Correct.
Because that would be half the distance.
Correct. We are covering the southern part of ambulance service that Hazel was previously covering. We're now covering that with that Lakeside Lake Worth ambulance to take some of that volume off of the Hazel team. They have a large call volume of their own in their city. They're still providing ambulance service to the Briar area and Pelican Bay. So by us taking some of that in, that will help us not only recoup some of our expenses through billing, but take some of that load off of the Hazel paramedics. Any other questions on ambulances right now? Okay. Improved turnout time and total response times. The addition of our staffing and facilities, as we've talked about previously, especially in the Whiskey Flats area, has definitely impacted these times. We had a fifth wheel RV home about 3 minutes from the Whiskey Flats station that was completely involved in fire yesterday afternoon. Our crew was on scene and putting water on the fire in 3 minutes. So super excited about their performance. There were 2 other trailers nearby that would have caught very quickly thereafter, and we were able to protect both of those. So the team's doing a great job, and the actions the board has taken to put these resources in place are making a difference. The other staffing additions, such as the engineer positions on the water tenders, also are yielding results with having that extra water on scene right away. We had a tractor trailer fire in Ben Brooks area today that our water tender from Whiskey Flats responded to and provided the additional water they needed to get that knocked down. So all of that is working as we hope. And with our record management software, incident-related times are being continuously monitored. Chief Ballou will tell you that I ask about them all the time. When I see a call that looks out of pocket to me, they get a text message and start researching. So Commissioner Costa was reached out this morning about an incident in his neighborhood last night, and I'm grateful the software is already yielding results. We were able to find that data pretty quickly, and I think in less than an hour I was back to you with that information.
Yeah, it was pretty good response time.
Yes, it was. Was definitely happy with that, and I think that the thing to keep in mind too that's very exciting is that number will roughly cut in half when the Lakeside station's in place. So all good news on that. Any other questions about times? Okay. Utilize performance-based contracts for greater operational and fiscal accountability and transparency. So as you may recall, the board adopted a new funding mechanism for fire and EMS service contracts with the 26 budget. The mechanism is response-driven, and it only provides compensation for their actual primary responses into their covered ESD areas. It provides consistent funding for all providers at a more appropriate level to offset their expenses to operate at these incidents. I know that the fire chiefs in these departments will disagree. If I were in their shoes, I would disagree as well, but I feel like the consistency of the way we're paying service contracts now is definitely more in line with being equal to everyone for what actually is called on them to perform compared to what was happening in the past. We're also keeping an eye on response time related data for service providers, and you know, those situations like I talked about with Hazel and the heavy call load that they have, being able to take some of that load on ourselves with our personnel and equipment will help them out and help them keep their unit hour numbers at a more manageable level. As our facilities and response assets are installed and service contracts are going to continue to diminish, I will tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt, I do not envision a day during my tenure where we will be without any service contracts for the district. There are some areas that are just so remote and the volume is so low, it will just never make sense for us to deploy a fire station or vehicles or personnel to cover those areas. The one right off the top of my head is the area that Roanoke covers for you. They made a total of 34 responses last year to that area. So it just would never make sense for us to put a facility out there.
You know, for my benefit, as we get closer to fiscal year end, since this is a new funding mechanism that we're using this year, I would like to kind of see the differences between what we did last year
Sure.
and what we actually ended up with the response time. It would be
As-
good just for my information.
As when we get past Q3, so July-ish,
Perfect.
when we start getting towards actual budget and tax rate adoption, I will include that in one of the agendas so you can see it directly. That spreadsheet, and we've got two of the chiefs here tonight. I think they would agree that spreadsheet's very easy to use. It only takes them a few minutes. Some of them were providing pretty extensive reports, but again, we were getting them in so many different formats that it made it hard to compile all that data accurately. So at the very least, those pocket types of calls are captured in the funding sheet that we use now.
So thank you for that.
You bet. Any other questions about service contracts? Okay. So additional Fitch recommendations that are continuing, I'm going to call these works in progress. Chief Ballou and Chief Mays are dealing with our TCRC folks on a regular basis. They attend all the meetings. Chief Brown and Chief Ballou went to a CAD demonstration today on a new CAD system that they're considering. So we are heavily involved. We're one of the larger contributors funding-wise to that group. So we are directly involved, and we are watching closely with the data that's coming out of dispatch that the right units are going to calls in the right areas. It's handled on a case-by-case basis if something looks out of line. But we'll continue to watch it, and our progress would be that we'll continue to work with TCRC and to work to improve with them, while also evaluating, any other opportunities that may come along long-term that may provide a more efficient or effective service from dispatch for us. So it's always on our radar to be watching other opportunities that may come along that would be better for the district and our residents. One of the other recommendations from Fitch was to eliminate interfacility non-emergency transports. As you'll recall, Eagle Mountain had an agreement with the hospital in Azle to do that, and they were doing it for some other nursing facilities and what have you, I believe. And they ceased all of those operations back the end of October last year. So we have effectively achieved that recommendation. Cross-staffing ambulances from fire engines once call loads increase above 1,500 incidents a year. This is getting into the unit hour utilization numbers that I was speaking to. As you may recall, that was a standard practice in Rendon and Eagle Mountain both, that they would take people off the fire truck to staff up other ambulances. And now that we are constant staffing ambulances and fire engines adequately, then there's not a need to do that cross-staffing. The only time where that comes into play now is if we have a brush fire, and someone will hop over on the brush truck to bring it along, and those units just respond in tandem. Anticipate a 6-month lag before ambulance billing revenue will be regularly received. Chief Brown can speak to this a little more during the EMS update, but and Historically, my experience with billing is you're about a 90-day lag from the response to when you see the funding from the insurance companies coming in. With us getting started later this month, hopefully with our billing processes, we would anticipate we'll start seeing revenue sometime in August. So again, we feel like we've achieved this with what's been put in place. Redefined response zones as ESD assets are put in service. I've spoken to this already in a previous slide. We've already done that in numerous locations. The Eagle Mountain area, we have taken in some of the Newark area, the Haslett area, and the Saginaw area for the Eagle Mountain Station. Briar has taken in some of Azle's fire response area on the north side. We have taken in ambulance area on the south side from Azle, and the Kennedale and Everman. I'll remember in a minute. The Kennedale and Everman ambulance areas are now being covered by Rendon. And not to forget Whiskey Flats and the Crescent area is almost completely now covered by the Whiskey Flats crew. Crescent is still responding as a mutual aid partner, and we will reciprocate that as well to them. But Whiskey Flats is covering that entire area down there, plus a little bit of Benbrook's fire area on the south side of the lake. And I can't believe I remembered all that in my head. All right.
And I think it was weaved into the recommendation, but one of the things that, I think is probably one of the biggest things we've accomplished this year was the transition from the volunteer fire departments
Sure.
to a professional staff.
Sure.
And I'm not sure if I saw that in called out specifically, because I think that's something that we really need to.
It needs to be highlighted as an accomplishment, but I don't think it was I don't think it fits you address that as an objective.
Well, I thought that they did. I thought they did put in there that, to transition from the volunteer fire department model to the professional model.
The Fitch study, what I recall it calling out, it recommended consideration towards potentially us adding some staff in those departments, not necessarily full transition to the ESD.
I could be wrong, but
Sure.
To me, that's just been one of the biggest
Sure.
things that we have accomplished this year.
I would agree completely, and we are seeing results of the decisions that have been made, and I think that we're going to continue to see a lot of positive.
And that's not to diminish, what the volunteer fire departments
Sure.
did and have done for years and years. It was just it was a transition that we went
Indeed.
through.
I think the natural progression of service as areas develop and become more dense and more populated and more demanding, it was overdue to happen. I think the board took some very positive action to move service levels to a much higher, more effective level. And I'm not wishing any fires on anybody, but I think as those things happen, we're going to continue to see positive results. We've not seen any situations where our efforts have reduced the service by any means. It's always been showing to be a better level of service than what we were doing.
Okay. Thanks.
You bet.
Any other questions or comments on the Fitch study recommendations? Okay.
I would just have one, and just that, I don't feel like we've made enough progress on the lake side. I feel like, we still have a ways to go so that we can support Azle better, so that we can meet the needs in that area, and I'm worried about the timeline of it.
I think you're going to be very excited when we get to that portion of the meeting tonight. I've got some good information. Again, I'll simply reemphasize it's going to depend on funding, but with agreed upon funding to move forward, I think it is reasonable to think within a couple of years activity has started on the Lakeside Station. So I'll just share that with you.
A couple of years?
We have spoken with the contractor. I don't want to get too far ahead of my skis here, but we have spoken with them, and they have assured us that the architect and the construction manager both have adequate capacity in their organizations to be building one and in design on the next, moving straight on into construction, and then any renovations at Eagle Mountain South as well, that they can encompass all of that into continuous work.
He meant completion, not starting in a couple of years. Okay. We'll move on to item 5, Board of Commissioners comments and announcements. Any comments, announcements? Okay. Item 6, discussion and possible action regarding the order of business or agenda items. Does anybody have an issue with the agenda as written? Okay, then I'll accept a motion to approve the agenda as written.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Okay. At this point, we'll move into item 7, which is public comments. And we do have a speaker, Tracy Becker. If you will approach the dais.
I'm Tracy Becker. I'm the EMS captain with Crescent Volunteer Fire Department. I just wanted to say thank you guys for assisting us with our EKG clinic. The purpose of the clinic was to provide free screening. Particularly, our focus was for youth athletes where there's undiagnosed cardiac conditions that can cause sudden cardiac arrest and death. Joe and Tyler were fantastic. We really appreciated them being there. Also, the on-duty crew stopped by, which really meant a lot, especially because we were still responding to calls during that time. So just having the extra hands was, just great. Let's see, what else? We served over 180 EKGs in one day. So we were really busy. We had people come from as far as Keller and Stephenville, which just highlights how badly the community is wanting a service like this. So just wanted to say thank you. We look forward to serving with you guys, not just in serving the community through events like this, but also in responding to calls like the RV fire yesterday.
Yeah.
So thank you guys.
No, thank
Kudos
you.
to
Thank you.
for
Thank you.
conducting
Yeah,
that.
thank you so much.
Chief, is that something we need to consider expanding and doing more of in other areas?
I think it's definitely something that we look at. This was Crescent's event that we stepped up to assist with, but I think there's likely an opportunity to partner with them further and expand it. I would love for us to take a look at other opportunities along those lines. I think any type of additional community services in a non-emergent fashion like that we can provide, we need to take a hard look at. I mean, relatively inexpensive to us to be a part of that. So absolutely.
Okay. At this point, we will move to item 8, which is the consent agenda. Does anybody have any issues with the minutes or the investment report as provided previously? Then I will accept a motion to approve the consent agenda as written.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Okay. The consent agenda is approved. Item 9, public hearings, meetings, and other related items. There are none. Item 10, contracts, agreements, bid awards, and other related items. Again, there are none. So we're on to item 11, action items. Item A is discussion and or action on the adoption of a Tarrant County Emergency Services District fee schedule for fire and EMS services. Chief?
Thank you, Mr. President. So I will tell you the precipitating factor that caused us to bring this forward tonight is that the board has to officially adopt a fee schedule that includes our ambulance billing fees in order for us to start billing for ambulance. Without an adopted set of fees, that leaves us exposed and makes those fees negotiable at that point. And as we all know, insurance companies are very good at negotiating those things. So if we can lock those in, that can prove helpful to us in the future. But we've also added some proposed costs for standby services. We will get requests periodically from community groups, different promoters. The things coming to mind would be things like motocross races, rodeos, things like that. Some of these things happen down in the Rendon area fairly often. and folks will reach out, and it'll be very difficult to provide continuous services with our on-duty crews. And if they want a dedicated ambulance or a fire engine, whatever it may be, the only way really to do that is through a standby, which means we're going to have to pay someone overtime to come in, and then the use of that equipment for that time. So this fee schedule covers all of that. It has some information in it about fire watch, and also fire alarm responses. If we find someone with a residential alarm, they're not maintaining that alarm, and we seem to be going there regularly for false alarms, then we're going to go out and we're going to have those discussions multiple times, but at some point a fee is going to be charged for us to continue responding to those calls. And last but not least, we included our open records request information on here. That's all governed by state law, but felt like it was appropriate to just include it in the fee schedule. If someone is looking for it, then they'll know that, you know, we're going to follow whatever state law is. But there will be some additional fees for fire services. As you'll recall, when we signed the contract with our EMS billing agency, they offered a fire billing component as well that is just percentage based, just like the ambulance billing. And we are still putting that together. We didn't have all that data from them in order to have it ready for tonight's meeting, so we'll bring that one component back next month and amend this then. But with the fact that we're hoping to be billing by the end of this month, we needed to get this schedule adopted.
Chief, and what process was taken to come up with the figures for the fees?
So, especially on the ambulance side of things, there are reasonable and customary fees for these types of services that are out there. We had all the data that our service provider agencies used from when we did the surveys last year, right after I started. Chief Brown, I know, had history and understanding of this from his previous agencies. So we mostly aligned ourselves with what the billing service recommended, but there were some minor tweaks to that based on some of our experiences and what we know and don't know insurance companies will pay. And our recommendation would be the adoption of the fee schedule as it's been presented, with an anticipated amendment to it next month to add those fire service fees.
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion that we adopt the Tarrant County Emergency Service District #1 fee schedule for fire and EMS service.
Do I have a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's approved. Item B under action items, discussion and/or action regarding past, current, and future fire station construction and renovation.
It still seems to be me again. All right. So land or fire station purchases that have been completed. I think this speaks, Commissioner, to what you were mentioning earlier about the Rendon station. We have that information captured here. The Whiskey Flats land has been purchased. The Rendon Fire Station site has been purchased. Land for Eagle Mountain North, and then the land and facilities as part of the transition when we purchased Eagle Mountain. That was, if you'll recall, that fee was $2.5 million. The land component of that for the land and buildings was $1.6 million, and then $900,000 for the vehicles and equipment. Completed fire station facility renovations, budgets are there. Detailed list of each one. I will spare you me reading all of that to you. I would say, suffice it to say, that we have done some extensive renovations. You know what this building looked like when we leased it, and to be in the place we are today, and it of course was an extensive renovation. The Briar renovation is nearing completion. I was out there this afternoon, and the retaining wall, they were doing the last of the concrete for the retaining wall behind the station, and the drainage has all been installed. Rendon Phase 1 is nearing completion. There are a couple of components that should be in the next couple of weeks. and that we will close out phase one down there, but they occupied that building last Thursday. So they are occupied and responding now from the new station. And I have some pictures from last week. We'll be planning the open house grand opening event for that station in the near future. We'll let you know when we start getting closer on that, but we're going to have several of those. We need to do it in Briar with the new units, and in Rendon, and then likely also something in Eagle Mountain. So
Right.
it may be a party summer for the ESD.
Cool.
The fire administrator, what was the lease term on this building?
We signed a 3-year lease with 2 renewals on that, so it's a total of 5 years before we have to go back to the lease agreement and negotiate with the city again. And that lease agreement included a 3% escalation of the lease payment each year. So we were at $6,700 a month this year, and so that'll be up by 3% starting in October. Briar Phase 2 and the Eagle Mountain South startup, I was by there today. If you have been in the old Eagle Mountain Station, you recall the training room was the room that you walked into through the front door. We had a contractor come in and open that wall into the kitchen to create more of a kitchen living dining area to give them additional space. With 7 personnel assigned to that station now, having a place for them all to sit down to eat a meal was challenging. They were using a couple of 18-inch wide training tables and doing the best they could to make it work, but their table and chairs were delivered this afternoon, and we have refrigerators coming in tomorrow for them, and their lockers arrived Friday, so it was really starting to take shape, and they were actively working on getting the space set up. So,
Eagle Mountain South did have issues with having the right facilities for male versus female staff. Has that all been squared away?
so there is a half bath and a full bath in that station, and then they have the trailer out back that some of their personnel were sleeping in. So we still have that ability for them to use as they see fit. There's currently 1 female assigned to the crews at that station, and I couldn't tell you actually which method she prefers, to use the bathroom in the station or to use the one out in the trailer, but they know those are available to them if they prefer to use them. But the more extensive renovation at Eagle Mountain South that'll be part of the latter part of this discussion would include a complete floor plan redo that would include additional bathroom facilities to make sure there's adequate for the staff assigned. They only have 1 shower right now if they don't use the trailers, so that's a lot for 7 people. The future fire station projects, as you recall, Eagle Mountain North, like I said, the first contractor meeting was yesterday. So consider that program started. I have been assured that we will be moving dirt by fall, and if we assume a 12-month build time, barring 6 weeks of straight rainfall, then I think by October of next year we are moving crews into that building, and we're ready to start those renovations in South. Rendon Phase 2, I will tell you this was a surprise that hit us a few weeks back. The electricity in that building when it was built was put in as single phase, and I will beg your forgiveness. I am not an electrician or an expert. Some of our heavier equipment, specifically our breathing air compressor that fills our air pack bottles, operates on 3-phase electricity. And I forgot that we have our electrical expert on the panel, sir. I apologize. So we are in the process of getting all the pricing put together, exact pricing for what it is going to cost to bring 3-phase power to the building. The service to that building, living quarters and bay, is only 600 amps, and we are just about maxing that out with everything that's there today. So getting 3-phase in the building and upgrading the size of that panel to an 800 amp panel, and then adding a backup generator that will run that whole facility, is what this phase 2 speaks to. I can tell you from the electrician's mouth only yesterday, I would anticipate that fee is going to be probably closer to half or just over than this number. This was a placeholder more because I didn't have a firm number from them. Yeah, we're probably much closer to the 550, 600, somewhere around there. And the electrician's cost, generator and all in that, were in that 300 to 350 range, just depending on exactly where they end up spotting the generator and the panels, etc. So more to come on that, but I will tell you, though the buildings are insulated, those truck bays do not have heat. So that is a priority for us to get this project underway as soon as possible, to get the electrical changed and to get heat added to the building prior to freezing weather come November, December timeframe. So we'll be pushing forward with that just as soon as we can get firm numbers and board approval to do so. The Lakeside station there below, we would anticipate the design portion of that station could now start as soon as the 1st of next year with approved funding, and have us worst case scenario in that building by mid-28. If we are able to put a very similar footprint to the Eagle Mountain North Station on the land in Lakeside, then the design part of the process will be shortened considerably. We may have to make some small tweaks, but we would be able to likely get that design done in a lot quicker time, which is only going to shorten that construction time. So reasonably, if we're able to shorten design, it could be as early as spring of 28 that we could be in that building. Now, the other side of that component is funding the apparatus and the personnel assets to occupy that. And I have those numbers in here for you later on as well.
The Lakeside lot is a much smaller lot than what we've got at Eagle Mountain. Or, I mean, do you think?
It's actually, after meeting with them a couple of weeks ago, they actually have a total of 5 acres there, and they've said that we can have as much of it as we need. That includes where the pickleball courts are now, and I took from the city administrator there may be a little bit of love-hate relationship with the pickleball courts, but
I know some people who will be very distressed.
oh
about
yes,
pickleball.
there are indeed. It is not my intention to recommend that we do anything with the land occupied by the pickleball courts. There is additional land to the northwest of the water tower. It's kind of an L-shaped open area that I think we can shift our parking to that area.
Okay.
And I think the building can fit. Right now, as you saw in the drawing yesterday, there's a fair amount of parking behind the building at Eagle Mountain North, and we would just shift that parking to that northwest side.
Okay.
And it would enable us not to need as much depth on the lot.
Very cool.
So if you had a similar design and a footprint, it's kind of similar, is the additional $1 million is primarily escalation, or why do you think it's cost so much?
I think it is escalation. From talking with the contractor and with some others in the market, that 7 to 7.5% is what they're seeing right now. But because of the impact of what was going on in the Middle East with fuel prices, they're starting to see fuel surcharges and things like that. So the cost of delivery of supplies and equipment is going up, and the contractors are going to pass all of that right along to the end consumers. So we're simply trying to budget accordingly to make sure that we budget it adequately. And I would also point out again, these are placeholder numbers. These are cost. This is just estimating as best we can with today's information. It's always subject to change as we move forward. And the other thing to keep in mind is if we borrow this amount, it doesn't mean we have to spend it all. If we don't spend it all, that money could be paid against the note. It could be used to expand the project, to do other things. Maybe we want to enlarge a community room or something like that if we got better pricing than we expected.
Chief, if we're moving dirt in Eagle Mountain in early fall, can we advance Lakeside by a quarter? I mean, can they move straight from Eagle Mountain right into into Lakeside? Is there any opportunity to start Lakeside, say, in October and move that?
I reasonably, the design side of it, possibly. I don't want to speak out of turn for the contractors, because we didn't really talk in that direction necessarily when I spoke with them about it. We will move as quickly on it as is humanly possible. I will also add that, you know, there's a fair staff component to this for us to be in these meetings on site, looking at things. There is a lot of time spent checking things, right? And that's part of what our owner's rep will be doing that we contracted with. That's part of it. But at the same time, our staff need to be laying eyes on things, making sure layout of rooms is what we anticipated. And as they move towards finishes, are the electrical plugs in the right places? Are the AV connections where we wanted them? You know, does the door swing the right way, or is that going to interfere with someone's locker? It's very tedious things that you have to spend a lot of time double checking. And I just, if we get too many projects going at one time, that means we're trying to send multiple staff members out. It makes me nervous that the end product won't be what we want it to be because we didn't have the personnel able to commit to it. So I don't want to tell you exactly when we can start it. I'll just simply commit to we'll start it as quickly as is feasible between the contractor and our staff. I know how important they are to get on the ground. I know what these projects mean to each of you, and I certainly want to meet your expectations on those, but I'm going to be fair and honest with you. Over the last 10 months, I have beat the crap out of my staff, and I do not want to push them to burnout, and we've got to manage that a little bit.
Agree. Next question, the owner's rep that we've hired, is that a construction person? Is that a fire person? Or, I mean,
It is a construction person who has 35 plus years experience with municipal projects, working both on the city side and the contractor side, and he has built roughly a dozen fire stations in his past.
Okay.
And he did not initially submit a proposal for the project. He was highly recommended to talk to by the contractor and the architect in two different discussions, that his municipal experience specifically would be critical for a fire station project. And the other two that submitted on that, their fire station experience, they had some, but they were a lot more in the commercial market than they were in the public market. So,
okay. Thank you.
yes, sir. As you'll see from Lakeside, then the Eagle Mountain South renovation can be fit into the middle of this as well, and Whiskey Flats would transition on down. I do think we're going to continue to assess the situation. Initially, when we leased the building in Whiskey Flats, there was no interest from the owner in potentially selling that property to us. We received word through the family's liaison a few months ago that they had softened to that some because of the impact the station being there has had on the community. So we are going to try to get a meeting set up with them just to have the discussion to see, is that a more viable long-term option? The size of that facility alone has already proven very useful to us for storing apparatus and equipment. And I think the sky's the limit on other things we could do if we own the property. So just trying to use our tax dollars wisely, I at least want to get that information for you before we commit to another site-built station. And we can always turn around and list that land and sell it down the road. Odds are it is not going to get cheaper.
Yeah, we'll probably make a profit on it.
It's in our best interest, I think, to evaluate both before we make a final decision on
I
Whiskey
agree with
Flats.
Yes.
All right. Any other questions on these? Okay. So as far as future fire station construction and renovation, I just want to make sure that you know, we're upfront with our assumptions. Financed funding is readily available to begin these projects in the order that's been proposed on the timeline that's been proposed. Cost estimations are based on base price plus escalation. based on the order of the event and the timeline and current needs for the facility as the services are needed today. If we have a 500-bed skilled nursing facility move into Lakeside between now and that station opening, that is likely to impact our service demand. And do we need 2 ambulances there now? Now, that's an extreme example, obviously, but that's just the kind of things that can happen in the community that we have no idea about today that could become our responsibility down the line.
Data centers is another one. I mean,
Indeed.
they just talked about moving the one that was approved down south into the ESD area.
What is it? 10,000 homes in the Peden Road Bonds Ranch area that are going to be ESD responsibility for the next 25 years to provide protection to.
Yep, not to mention commercial.
Indeed. So a lot to go there. I do want to stress that the timeline we showed you in the previous slides does not apply to a pay as we go funding option.
You got that highlighted just for me.
I want to make sure you know that I did not include that. No, sir. But
Know your audience.
Richard, you know what I did do for you? I made you this giant piece of paper with a color graph
That's
on
good.
it.
Give me my glass.
All right. So future fire station projects, Briar is the very last one on this group. As you know, the Briar Station is in the very northeast corner of their district. They are providing coverage, but ideally we would move that building south to give a more consistent response coverage to their district. Though we have made some substantial renovations to that building and some new furnishings and what have you, it is still a very old metal building. So long term, I think we have to include in our plan to relocate that facility. Depending on when that happens, obviously, is going to impact what those costs are. So in looking at the work we have completed or is in progress, we're a little over $9 million there, and we're estimating in that $31 to $32 million range is where we're going to need to be to complete all these additional projects over time.
And where was Briar in the order?
It's last. Yes, ma'am.
Not start until 2030.
Yeah.
And I assume Briar, hopefully we'll have a lot more data around response times, and this can be a metric-based decision rather than what we can make now. Okay.
We want to be, since we have that station operational, we want to be selective about where we put it to make sure that we maximize the value add if we're going to do it.
Okay.
And Chief, may I ask?
Yes, ma'am.
What part of our annual budget per year can be allotted towards funding the construction and renovation of the stations without any financing?
So the number we have plugged in the proposed 27 budget is $2.5 million. And that annual contribution is what all of the next items calculations are based on.
Okay, 2.5 on average per year going forward.
Correct, starting with the 27 budget.
Thank you.
You bet. So again, this was just an update item for you on what we've done and what needs to be done. And from that, we can move on.
Okay, we'll move on to item C in action items. Discussion and or action regarding selection of a preferred funding model for future capital facility projects. Chief?
Yes, sir. So we have been working through funding scenarios, partnering with government capital to do that since early this budget year. It really comes down to 2 funding options. We save the money until we can afford to build a fire station, or we borrow the money up front and we pay it back over time and we start building fire stations now. And both are viable solutions to get there. But I think as we have talked about from day one, and as the Fitch study stressed throughout, enhancing public safety and what is the importance of timely enhancement of public safety. Do we do that as soon as possible because it's what's best for the community, or do we maintain our fiscal responsibility and keep ourselves in check, live within our means, if you will, and we do it in the most timely manner possible in that scenario? And it is not my decision. I am happy to carry forward whichever option the board chooses, but in order for us to proceed with any of this, we are going to have to make that decision.
And I think it's important, sorry to interrupt, I think it's important that we bake in costs that are outside of the ESD. How much are homeowners paying in homeowners insurance, double, triple, quadruple, that if we make them wait 15 years for a fire station, those costs are going to continue to escalate. So there's those fees that we would be providing. In addition to enhanced public safety, we're going to be saving people money if we give them a fire station closer,
Right.
sooner.
Indeed. I'm happy to have Mr. Ed King with us again to help guide us through the scenarios with regard to financed funding. I have some information a little further in the presentation as far as the fire stations and what we're going to house in them and what their capabilities will be.
Are we allowed to heckle? Is that still?
You are welcome to heckle Ed. He's a pretty good sized fellow, so you do so at your own peril, sir.
That's right. We'll have to take it out in the parking lot. Good evening, Commissioners. Good to see you again. I think this is an extremely important juncture for the.
Are you guys able to hear him? Is his microphone on?
Okay, I'll try to speak up, Mr. President. This is a very important juncture for the ESD. As you're weighing a lot of growth and changes in the way you're addressing the needs within the district and serving the needs of the community, you're having to make decisions about deploying assets and capital and personnel and ramping up fairly rapidly in order to hit certain metrics. And there's really no scenario where any option exists that doesn't cost something. Every option, there's two that Chief Shelley mentioned, but certainly one option is that we wouldn't consider probably is just don't do anything. And then we can accumulate and have a lot of money in reserve, and our response times will do like this. So certainly the mission of the ESD is not to levy taxes so that we can generate big balance sheets and have liquidity on our balance sheet. Is to drive down the time it takes for personnel and assets to be on scene. And that's really the mission. And then you balance the financial dynamics and the economics of actually delivering that. And you try to make the best decision to deliver those services in the most efficient manner possible for the taxpayers. But never making it a for-profit endeavor, to levy a tax and let's just generate a lot of cash so we never have to worry about anything financially. But let's try to balance those things. I think that's what it is. So using external capital to accelerate these projects is really the evaluation, is because we have our own internal capital and there's a timeline associated with that. There's benefits of doing that. And then there's the option of using external capital to accelerate the deployment of those projects, and there's cost associated with that. What are these trade-offs? What does it look like? Certainly, if you look at using external capital financing to ramp up and get these projects on the ground sooner, we certainly are going to decrease our on-scene response times versus the pay-as-you-go. In the current environment, as Chief Shelley mentioned, the interest cost on an annual basis is lower than the inflation cost. Now, there's a variety of ways you can analyze that going forward. Do you assume that you're going to have that capital set aside forever? Or there's some unknowns when you're analyzing this situation. But if you just say, what do we know today? Today, interest costs are way below on an annual basis for the same amount of capital what the inflation is on the cost of that project. And we've talked about this. I know the board you've reviewed this and discussed it. And it's an important key to making a decision. What's the best way to get this done in the most efficient manner? Because at various times in the last 20 or 30 years, these dynamics wouldn't be where they are today. Certainly, the effective interest rates that you're seeing on your fund balance reserves is a consideration. It's not the main driver as to whether to finance or not, but it is a consideration when you look at if we did this today, where would we be in 5 or 10 years, for example. And that's one of the analysis we think is important. The first starting point with regard to what is this going to cost, if you looked at from a financing perspective, is the actual, just if you want to say the gross cost of the debt, without considering any of the offsets to the cost. And Chief Shelley asked that I run a couple of scenarios for the board. One for a $17 million assumed funding for 10 years. Market rates today are probably around 4% on that. So you'd have an annual payment of $2.1 million and total cost of financing over that term of $4.2 million. And the same methodology for a $25 million scenario on a 15-year term, a little bit higher interest rate, the annual payment's slightly higher, the total cost of financing $9.7 million over the 15 years. And then $32 million as a final scenario on a 20-year term at 4.5%, estimated today's rates, annual payments, still within that $2.5 million budget that you've been using for capital projects. It stays within that. Your total cost over the full 20 years, if you carried it to term, would be $17.8 million. These are all structures that are available to the ESD to issue pursuant to Health and Safety Code 775-085. We can go up to 20 years to finance these types of projects. It includes all the financing costs, the legal cost of issuance, et cetera. And then with regard to early payoff options, as you develop reserves or if sales tax comes in, that's something we'd want to look at and have some discussion before we went out to the market so that we can make sure that if the board decides to actually go out and bring some external capital, bring some financing to these projects, that we know what the structure components are that are a priority for the board with regard to early payoff options. When would we maybe consider being able to pull reserves down to pay off debt? We talked about, I think one of the last times we visited about this was a break-even analysis on your cash yields. If they drop below a certain point, maybe we think about using that excess reserves and chunking down some debt potentially. So those are certainly things that would be part of that. But that just gives you kind of a top-line cost, basis, and it's where we would start in the analysis.
Ed, if I can, I skipped ahead of a couple of slides. I brought you up just a scotch too soon, but I want to clarify for the board what these three funding levels represent. So the $17 million level, you had asked me over the last month to provide you options, not necessarily let's fund all the projects, right? So the $32 million option at the bottom would be upfront funding for everything we need to build through Briar, okay? The $17 million option on a 10-year note would be Eagle Mountain North, the renovation at South, the Rendon Phase 2 electrical work we need to do, and Lakeside. So that would get us to 6 stations operating at that point. The $25 million would be adding the cost for a new Whiskey Flats facility or buying the facility in Whiskey Flats now and making a renovation of that building. And then 32 again is the full package.
So the end number is the cost of the financing?
That's what the interest would cost over the 10-year term of that note.
That into the presentation.
That's all him.
If you carried it to the full term, that's right.
17 million.
So another consideration would be with regard to the timing. Obviously, the $32 million option includes, I believe, the total CapEx number, Chief, that was on the slide. Some of that has already been expended, or is that future expenditures?
You're talking about the 9.3 million?
You've expended 9.3, and there's another 31 left.
That's
okay.
correct. That's
okay.
correct.
That
So
sense.
it's really roughly
That
almost
makes sense.
41.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
You bet.
So but certainly if you looked at the larger amounts, the 25 or 32, you're probably not going to issue that all at one time.
Right.
You're going to stage that. You're going to issue that in tranches. But still, just as a starting point is if we just think about what the interest cost or the financing cost would be for that amount of capital over that term at those assumed rates, that's what it would cost. And then we've got to say, well, what are the benefits? What are some of the offsets to that? And that's what we'll get to next. So the next immediate question is how do we justify that cost? What do we get? What does DSD, what does the taxpayers get in return for the cost that is incurred for that capital, for that debt? And certainly the most obvious and the immediate benefit is that we avoid the escalation cost. So what we did is we looked at the pay-as-you-go option and looked at the timeline associated with that and the projected cost for those projects if you waited to build them on the pay-as-you-go basis. And then we compared that to financing the projects where you don't totally eliminate all escalation costs. For example, you might have a year of escalation cost or 6 months or 8 months on Lakeside, for example. That doesn't mean that it goes away with financing, assuming we closed it, say, later this year. But we certainly mitigate 2 or 3 years of escalation costs. So you take that through the whole project list, and now we can evaluate what's the benefit with regard to the interest cost versus avoiding and mitigating that escalation cost. So if I used a 10-year example because it's just an easy number to work with. We could carry this out on a 15 or 20-year term in terms of the analysis, but I think 10-year is a little bit more succinct. So if you looked at the projects, the Eagle Mountain North, South, Lakeside, Whiskey Flats, Briar, the relocation, and you looked at the 10-year financing cost for each of those, if you finance those, that's what the 10-year financing cost column is. It would be $8.4 million.
On 17 million borrowed.
No, well, five, whatever the total is, I don't have that in front of me, Mr. President. It's a 12.
That's actually on everything.
Yeah,
that's
on
through
everything.
Briar.
Okay.
So if you finance the full, I think it's 31 or 32 million.
Okay.
Yeah, for 10 years, it'd be 8.4, 8.5 million. Yeah, that's a 10-year. Now remember when we were looking at the 32 on the previous slide is on a 20-year term.
Right.
So that's the delta between the 17 and the 8.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the financing cost is almost a third of the value of the station.
It's
On average.
8.4
I
million
guess it varies slightly, but
over the 10-year.
Yeah, it's going to be between 25 and 30%. Yeah, somewhere in that range. Correct.
thank you.
So but if you don't finance, the question becomes now what do those projects cost the taxpayers? We know what it costs if you finance. What does it cost if we don't finance and we just pay for it at the time that we have the funds available? Based upon the spreadsheet and the work done with the construction timeline, the escalation cost would be $9.7 million without financing. So there's an immediate offset with regard to how do we justify or think about the cost of money and time versus delaying the project, because we don't have a free lunch either way. We go with one, there's a cost. We go with another, there's a cost. What are those costs and what are those benefits? Certainly the benefit of immediately moving forward is to the community and to the response times. Financially, there actually ends up being a financial benefit as well, just because of the dynamics we have, where we have relatively inexpensive cost of money for borrowing, and we have a relatively high inflation rate. That's probably going to go up next year. I think there were 3 scenarios, 5, 7, and 9% on the spreadsheet, and I built this around the 7% mid. I think that'll be low for certainly next year. If we see oil prices, West Texas crude coming in at $100 or north in January of next year, I was talking to an ESD on Pecos, Permian Basin. They're going to see a 60-70% increase in assessed values from that because they were down 30% this year. Well, that's an assessed value analysis, but from the standpoint of the cost of the contributional cost to goods, projects, personnel, inflation report came in today a little bit hot, and that's just for your basic basket of goods. That's groceries, et cetera, and energy is part of that. But we're also seeing wage growth that's staying up with inflation and actually outpacing inflation, which means we couldn't expect labor costs to decrease. So we've got an increased cost of materials, and we have an increased cost of labor on the horizon. I think 7% is probably conservative next year for sure. Now, we don't know what's gonna happen 3 or 4 years from now. We really don't. But we have to make the best projections we can, balancing the fact that our mission is to drive down the response times, to get personnel and assets on scene as quickly as possible, to deliver that public safety to the community, and balance the financial side of getting that done. And I think we have a bit of a unique opportunity because of the inflation cost relative to the interest cost, the cost of financing, that makes the ability to deploy it, I'm not gonna say it's free, there's a cost either way, but we certainly can look at a way to offset that cost. So as a taxpayer in both Tarrant and Johnson County, I'm interested in getting a bang for the buck as a taxpayer. And I would wanna know, what is this gonna cost taxpayers? And I think that's a very, very important question. There's one, if you could go back, Chief, there's one slide, we won't spend a lot of time on because it's not really central, but your yield on fund balance. Again, we talked about this, but I just want to give you an example. So Eagle Mountain North and Eagle Mountain South, I think you have the fund reserves to do those out of budget, more or less. I'm just, at least for our discussion here, I'm going to assume that we are. If you finance those projects versus just left that in yielding in your tax pool account at the current rates today, fast forward 10 years from now, where are you at? There's several different ways to analyze this question, but that's a simple one. If we do this, where are we in 10 years? In 10 years on Eagle Mountain North, you would have earned $2.1 million in interest on those funds that you have today. On Eagle Mountain South, you'd have earned $960,000. So that's not, those are obviously direct offsets to the cost of the external capital, because it allowed you to leave your internal capital at work. Again, not a central reason to go borrow if you don't need to borrow, but it is a consideration, because if you can earn a yield on current cash, that's within a point or a point and a half of what your cost of external capital is, that's a pretty attractive equation, assuming you need to do the projects and assuming there's a benefit to maintaining reserves on your balance sheet. And if you're in an environment where you're looking to try to get to your 180 of OPEX, 180 days of OPEX, that probably is some benefit. There's no way to really calculate that and quantify what that benefit is economically, but it certainly would be a step towards meeting the long-term goal of the ESD financially. So I did calculate on a net basis, but again, just the escalation cost, just addressing the escalation cost, essentially it creates a break even for the financing in this scenario. So again, what will this cost taxpayers? A critical question. Option one, if we pay as we go, we're going to realize about $15.8 million in escalation cost based upon the timelines we have. It is going to delay the implementation of the projects. We don't know for sure what that would do to response times, but they wouldn't go down. Option two is to finance these projects. The gross cost of the financing, and for this analysis, we'll stick with the 10-year term, is $8.5 million plus some partial escalation cost of 5.6. So because you can't kick all the projects off in 26, right? So we still have some escalation cost, less some interest earned on that fund balance that you have today. So your net cost of financing in that scenario is 10.9 versus 15.8 of escalation cost if you pay as you go. That's the actual, because that 15.8 is going to impact your budget and the taxpayers' use of funds, not this year, but it will in 27, 8, 9, 30, all the way out into the late 30s. So it will come, those costs will be incurred. And certainly option two allows us to deploy the assets, get the project stood up, address those. I mean, if we erred on the side of getting projects built sooner rather than later, I think if you look at the mission of ESD, and if you look at the constituents in the district, we would want to err on the side of maybe we were a little quick. Maybe we could have waited a couple of years and saved a little bit of interest, but we saved a few lives because we were quick to do that.
I'm also going to throw it in again. I mentioned this earlier. what is the cost that we're gonna save taxpayers by bringing down their insurance rate, their homeowners' insurance rates?
Absolutely.
I've got
We don't
homeowners
even quantify it here.
in my neighborhood who are paying $12,000 and $14,000 a year in homeowners insurance versus people who are half a mile away who are paying 2 or 3, just because they're a little bit outside that 5-mile zone.
Critical,
Yeah, same boat.
especially for your small businesses and commercial properties. So, one of the, and just to tie in and to give a comparison for what we're looking at here, think about the Chisholm Trail project, the Chisholm Trail Parkway project. It's built in 2014 for $1.4 billion. I did some analysis and researched this. Today, if we built it today, that project would be $3.2 billion. Now, I know that was a private, like a P3 project, toll road, et cetera. But if you just said, for an example, if they had issued 30-year 4% muni bonds, they would have paid up to this point about $596 million in interest. But they would have saved net $1.4 billion. So we can see how using funds at the right time to get, because there's no free option. I go back to that. The idea that you can just go with option one and it's free, it doesn't cost you anything. No, it costs us something. So when you analyze it in those terms, you say, you know what? It seemed like, man, we don't want to put on a bunch more debt to build all this capital infrastructure back in 2014, but looking back, like, man, I'm sure glad we did. That's a great deal for the taxpayers. Now, I know that's a toll road, it's a little different, but I'm just saying, applied in a municipal setting, it's the same scenario. We don't know the future, but it's very, very likely that in the long run, deploying these projects sooner just from the escalation cost, even though you have a cost of capital to make that happen, is going to save the taxpayers money.
And what was the annual cost to employ, the least, the medium, and the all-in? There you go.
Yes, if you depend on which term, from 2.1 to 2.4 million, if you carried those to term, then obviously your total cost of financing is going to increase. There's a break-even point if you said let's just find a scenario where we don't come out of pocket net on the financing, then you're probably going to be in a 10 or 12-year scenario because we're ahead on the 10-year model. I can tell you we're ahead. In terms of financing as an option, I say we, just in the terms of the decision-making, deliberative process of the board, we would be ahead on a 10-year situation. So it's like your break-even is 11 or 12. So if you go past that, you're going to have net cost associated with the financing. Tarrant County had a $511 million bond election in 2021. Well, they've got $750 million in fund balance today. There's a time and a need. Just because you have the funds in place doesn't mean there's not a place and a time to use debt appropriately. And so I think that you could run all kinds of analysis. Why did the county have a bond election? They've got all this money sitting in the bank. Well, there's different reasons, different strategies, there's different goals when you're managing your capital, long-term capital budgets and how you fund those. And so I think that it can be a smart tool, and there are times it can be overused and can cost taxpayers. But I think at ESDs, it's a little bit easier from the standpoint of we're so mission focused and we're very narrow in what we're trying to accomplish. We're not operating several enterprise funds. We're not operating swimming pools and libraries, et cetera. So it allows us to really focus in and deploy our resources in a way that really delivers the service that's so central to our whole mission. And it makes it a little easier, I think, to evaluate the value of these projects versus, are we going to do some Parks and Rec project that maybe a third of the community will never use? This is something for everybody. So, are there any questions up to this point?
Can I get a copy of those slides?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. All of us.
Yep. I'll share the whole presentation with you by email.
Thank you.
There is a Chief Shelley asked me to put together an example of a timeline if we were to consider financing projects. So if we got to go ahead to represent the ESD out in the capital markets on June 1st, then we would look at closing sometime in mid-August. And there's steps in that process. You can see all the different things that are going on, the different parties that are involved, who has responsibility to do what. but that would be an estimated timeline. So that may align with some of the kickoff of the projects. There may be costs that are incurred prior to that you'd want to bring capitalize into the financing. We would want to do a reimbursement resolution for that. That has a 60-day look-back period on it. A reimbursement resolution on its own does not obligate the ESD or the board to finance. It just says that we may or we reasonably anticipate financing, and there's some capital cost that we've expended out of fund balance that we potentially may want to bring back in to reimburse the fund balance from those. So that's something you could probably do, as soon as it would be deemed feasible, if the board decides to go forward with this approach to funding. Again, the dollars and exactly which comma and how the term doesn't have to be determined tonight, but just in terms of what is our approach going to be. Then if you do decide your approach is going to be to accelerate deployment on these projects, probably the next step is to get a reimbursement resolution on an upcoming agenda.
Yeah, and we adopted that same resolution with the note that we did on the vehicles at last month's meeting. It's the very same thing.
Any questions? There may be a
Thank
lot.
you, good information. No,
Good.
it's a lot to think about.
It is.
Yeah,
It is.
it's a lot. Really appreciate the detail you went to, and I can see some of my questions were answered
Yeah.
in that. So
Yes.
thank you for
I think
conveying those and then for you preparing.
it's helpful to get questions when we know exactly what.
So it looks like it's almost from start June 1st to closing August 6th, give or take, probably about 2 months.
That's right. Yeah, 60 to 75 days would be reasonable. So there's time to think about it
Okay.
and to deliberate. But I think I think you have now the bookends of the conversation. What is the cost? What do we get in exchange? What's the benefit? And then you can decide what do you think is the best for the ESD and its constituents. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very
You bet.
much.
Really appreciate it.
So some of the additional requests from the board were to provide the staffing and operating costs that would be associated with some of these service enhancements. So adding an ambulance in Whiskey Flats, the operating expenses and additional personnel combined, you're looking at an additional $1 million a year to fund that. Now, there's going to be cost recovery there from the standpoint of ambulance billing. Exactly what that number is hard to estimate, but if you assume 20 to 25%, then the net expense to the ESD is probably about $700,000 to $800,000. Adding an engine company at Eagle Mountain South, that engine company cost year one is around $1.5 million, and then the operating expenses for that facility on top of it. If you look at everything listed here, which is Lakeside, Eagle Mountain South, and adding an ambulance at Whiskey Flats on top of the existing staff we have in place, you're going to be around $5 million a year for all of that up. Adding an ambulance in Briar long term is going to add that same $1 million expense, roughly, minus any billing recovery we would get from ambulance transports.
So do we have built into the model that you've shown us on these slides, the increased capital that it will take in order to staff these stations, especially Lakeside, and any additional staff we would hire? Is that also built in? We've got,
That's what this
That's what
is.
that
Yeah,
That's what
that's
this
what that
is.
that's what that is, but on the other chart that you gave us,
Other chart. I'm not sure what.
well, earlier, all the expense that you had for adding the different projects, did it include these numbers?
It did not. Those are construction costs and
Yes.
furnishings.
So we don't have anything that has all the costs, all in, for each station.
I mean, I can do the math quickly and tell you. I mean, on Eagle Mountain North, well, we're only talking about the additional stations. So if it costs us $6.5 million to build Lakeside,
So
You're
my
then-
question,
you're-
I think my question is this. So as we are adding these stations and our expenses are increasing each year as we're taking on more personnel, more equipment, is that decreasing the 2.5 that we have available for building? And where is that being taken out of our overall budget?
so I have not impacted the 2.5 allotment, because that would either be a payment or it would be have to savings for future capital projects, right? So I did not impact that at all. You're gonna see salaries do this, right? And they're gonna grow exponentially when you're talking about 120, 130 employees.
So that will
And-
not decrease the 2.5 per year available?
It either has to decrease there, or we have to see increased revenue, or we have to look at additional revenue streams. Whether
Yes.
that's increasing sales tax opportunities. You know, one of the things that I haven't been able to find information on is if there's an economic development component to Tarrant County proper or not. And is there anybody working to try to bring business into the unincorporated parts of the county? Because I don't know that there is, based on what I can find. Whereas most cities have an economic development director that's actively recruiting business to come to a city. So that's certainly something to look at and question. Is there an opportunity there? Other funding streams to help out?
No, I guess just from a high level, if you've got all of the additional stations that we've got, you're looking at additional almost 7 million.
It's six.
Six, right
It's
around
6 year one, and then you're going to be looking at that 3 to 4% cost escalation annually.
So based on our 100 people that we got right now, what was that? About 18?
So we're at, I think it's 12.6 in the proposed budget is what our salary and benefits costs are proposed at right now, and that's 100 employees.
Okay.
I showed you a table at the strategic planning workshop, and I have it, and I can send it to you again. I did a 5-year assessment with these additions, everything but Briar. And salary and benefits at 2031 is around 19.3.
And what's our revenue at that point?
If you do the revenue on that same deal, we're gonna probably be around 31, 32. If you consider that 5% growth you guys told me to use for sales tax and 2% assessed value of property annually. If we operate with those constants, then we're gonna net somewhere around 12 to 13 million to operate the ESD on outside of personnel. So that's the lights, the water, the fuel, vehicle maintenance, all our service contracts, working on heart monitors, ambulance supplies, toilet paper and paper towels, all the things that we have to pay for, bunker gear, uniforms, training. So I think Ed made a great point when he was talking about, you know, having a big nest egg of money sitting in the bank is definitely not what the mission of the ESD is. So much like we do with our own savings accounts, right? You get that number to a healthy number, and you want to keep it near that healthy number as much as you can. I mean, certainly I know I want to. But reality is, when we're in a growth stage like we are right now, when we're trying to put resources in place to provide service, we're going to see those operating reserves come down. I will tell you, where you had $20+ million in operating reserves last year, based on the math I've done on what our continued expenses are the rest of this year, the capital outlay that we still have to pay for, service contracts we still have to pay for, our operating reserves at budget year end are going to be somewhere in the $7 to $8 million range is what our reserve will be at that point. And that's still a very healthy reserve. It's not $20+ million, but it is a healthy reserve for what we have to do and maintain every day. I can assure you, between Jen and I, we're watching it all the time. Kurt doesn't like it when we tell him no, he can't go shopping, but we do have to tell him no sometimes. But we are closely monitoring all of this, and that's why I don't hesitate to tell you, as I did in the planning workshop, you know, long term to fund everything, if sales tax flattens out, if we see more of a recession where property values drop, then the only options we have are to raise revenue through whatever means necessary, or we have to reduce services. And obviously, we don't want to reduce public safety services. That's a apocalyptic situation, I would say.
Right.
So, other funding opportunities are out there. There are conversations that need to be had at some point down the line. We have talked previously during the planning workshop about an ESD overlay district that funds the ambulance service separately. It's a separate tax for the ambulance service, which allows us to divide our operations into fire and EMS. Yes, that's a cost to the property owner, but is there an opportunity to offset fees we might have to charge for those services by collecting a tax instead? Can we operate it more efficiently with a tax versus fees? Certainly our recovery for our efforts would be better, but
But those
taking
are all
that to the
future
community and
considerations.
justifying is a future consideration that I think for the long-term viability of the district, it's definitely something that has to be looked at. Denton County ESD just went through an overlay in the last couple of years for the very same reason, to fund their ambulance operations. And it doesn't necessarily mean we go in at a 10-cent cap tax. It could be any level between 0 and 10, depending on what we think we need to get it started. But I think those are long-term things to consider. Another, this will be unpopular with some, but it's certainly worth the conversation. But ambulance services in the county are very often included in the cost of the hospital district for the county. And I understand that is that's touchy subject because you're getting into other people's funding. But Parker County Hospital District funds the entire countywide ambulance service out of the hospital district. So is there an opportunity long-term to partner with the county and do something there to help augment the revenue stream for ambulance service, or a negotiated percentage of those costs that they help us with annually? I don't know all the different ways it could possibly be packaged, but it certainly begs the question at the very least.
Okay.
Any other questions on the staffing and operating costs? Okay. This is that slide, Richard, that we were discussing just a moment ago, sir. The 5-year based on the stations. So we're at that 12.6, and it translates out about 31 at about 19.6. So this is escalation plus additional resources that gets us to that number. So that $6 million shown on the previous slide is included in this $7 million difference here. And then down below, your staffing per station, and where you see the numbers at 100 in FY27, it's 136 by 31. So that's increasing our staffing by a third, is what all of those additions minus the ambulance and Briar, that's what that equates to. Any other questions on that? I know that's a lot of numbers to take in.
It is a lot. Can we get a copy of that slide too?
I'm going to give you the whole presentation. How about
I think
that?
you've already got it.
Thank you.
I already emailed it.
Oh, Alicia sent it. Thank you. All right. So this item is on the agenda as an action item. I added this item at the request of Commissioner Moore. I don't want you to feel like I'm throwing you under the bus, but you had asked me to add the funding mechanism as an action item to this agenda.
For discussion, yes.
Yep. So the staff's recommendation, my recommendation to you would be that we do the phased financed funding, do the $17 million option on a 10-year note. That's a lower annual payment, which frees up some of our revenue to use for some of the personnel expenses. You couple that with anticipated increases in revenue, and I think we're in a good place there. It also allows us to assess the Whiskey Flat situation and what we want to do down there. And then we reroute down the road to talk about that in Briar. I think this is a little bit more patient approach than jumping on all of it at one time. I know there have been concerns from the board in some instances how quickly we implement everything. So our recommendation includes taking that into consideration, that we do it at a little more paced rate. This would enable us to do Lakeside, Eagle Mountain South, and Eagle Mountain North, and the Rendon Phase 2 electrical work we've got to get done. It covers all of that.
But if I understand what Ed said, or if I understand this process right, we're not agreeing to the loan at this point. We're agreeing to have them go out and shop the loan.
That is correct.
And they would
But in
come.
essence, you're making the decision.
You're making the decision to
I mean,
move
you may
forward.
not, you're making the decision. I'm not ready to make that decision. I gotta think about all the numbers.
Sure.
I mean,
Understood.
And really, I guess the one other question I had is, how long has the ESD been in existence?
30 years
30
this year.
years. So 30 years we've never gone into debt. I'm not saying it's the right thing or not the right thing. But that's a huge decision.
Sure.
And so I would like to just be able to absorb the information, because we just got the 30 million all in, 25, 17.
Sure.
I think I need to get our stakeholders to let them know we're making kind of a shift, to just talk that through a little. I guess the other question, and I think I heard that as the ESD, legally, we can just get into financing
We can.
without having to go to a bond election or any kind of election with
So-
a taxpayer. And I guess, the other thing I would like to do is as we talk about the essential services that we're providing, it's public safety. And just like our taxpayers were able to vote in the sales tax to improve service levels, I really want to hear from the taxpayer that, hey, this is something that, they're kind of on board with.
Sure.
And I don't know what the good mechanism is to do that.
Sure.
Is that just having some open house meetings and saying, hey, as a board, this is kind of where we're headed? Are y'all, is the community saying, yeah, that's the right thing to do?
Can I offer some
is it a
clarification?
bond election that we can do? We may not have to do it, but is it something we should do?
Sure. Let me offer some clarification about what the proposal includes. So what I'm proposing here is not to increase the tax rate,
No, I get that,
right?
but we're
This-
borrowing money.
This is absorbing the cost to do this. Whether we're saving money or we're borrowing money, we're absorbing that in our existing revenue. We're not asking the taxpayers to raise the rate from 7.48 cents. We're saying we're going to allocate whatever part of the tax rate to cover that payment every year. We're just reallocating. Right now, we're 100% maintenance and operation, right? We have no money going to interest and sinking. So we can allocate a portion of our tax rate and say this portion of our tax rate every year is now funding interest and sinking. It's funding the note on this capital facility plan. Or we can say we're going to fund the annual payment from other revenue streams. We have a very healthy sales tax. We don't even have to say that we're tying down a portion of our property tax rate. We can say we're going to fund this from sales tax. And I had that conversation just the other day with Ed, and he said, absolutely, your revenue streams are healthy. You can dictate that in the documents with the loaning agency, how we're going to fund it. When you're justifying how you're going to make your payments, we're going to say we're going to fund it out of sales tax. If we had a giant ambulance revenue fund over here, we could say we're going to fund this out of ambulance revenue every year. So we have all those options. It is also always an option to go to the voters for a bond election for whatever the cost of that annual payment would do to the tax rate. Let's say it takes 2.1 cents to fund those annual payments. Well, then we could go to the taxpayers and say our proposal is to raise the ESD tax rate to 9.58 cents. And when the ESD was incorporated, at that moment, the people involved in that decision agreed to a 10-cent cap tax that day. They already made that decision that a tax up to 10 cents to provide public safety services was acceptable to them. I'm not saying we don't go back to them by any means. I'm just simply saying technically when they did that, they already said we're okay with this to this level. But having further discussion is certainly fine, and if you want to do town hall meetings or things like that,
At least that's kind of where, I mean, I just like, I just think I need to get some.
And I would agree, Richard. And I mean, at my house, we don't make decisions quickly on things like this, and I certainly wouldn't do that with someone else's money. I would definitely want to have time to process all that we've discussed and Ed said, and what you've said, Chief. Also, you know, the metrics, the data that we don't have yet in place to tell us how our response times are, to prove to us that we need these stations immediately. Maybe we're doing pretty good. We put so much in place already that I think we've made a lot of progress that we probably need to celebrate. We know.
I agree with you, but I'm also gonna ask, make sure you keep in mind that homeowner's insurance in there, that
Haven't forgotten it. I pay it every every
response
month.
times don't really get impacted.
I get a monthly reminder. No problem there. Also, you know, I would say, do we need to reprioritize the order of stations that we may want to improve or build? You know, we've got the 2.5 million allotted, but is there a way we would reprioritize those if we knew the data more? So those are thoughts I've had, Richard. And then, of course, you know, you pointed out, Chief, that we can only go as fast as the staff can handle it. And I know we've been going so fast.
Sure.
And we don't want to jeopardize the staff as well, while considering all these other things.
Yeah.
That's my perspective.
Yeah, I do think within that number, just adding discussion here, the 17 million, those three stations, I'll be 100% honest with you, the Rendon Phase 2 is a have to. That station's operational. We have got to put that three-phase power in place. We've got to put a backup generator in there. We don't want those folks down there without backup power if we have a storm that knocks out electricity for a few days. I know Richard's going to work fast to get them up and running, but
Every fire station should have a generator. Just
100%.
saying.
Yes, sir. That's why we're doing it. But the other three, the idea there would be that essentially we would be doing those almost simultaneously. So they're going to be a few months different in completion time, but I don't think that staggered completion time is substantial enough to necessarily worry too much about. Rather, we do Lakeside before Eagle Mountain South, because there's that design and construction document development component that is architect work that has got to go on regardless. Now, it can be shortened if we're using a similar design, but it is going to still have to go on to a certain degree, and that renovation project can likely be completed while those are happening at the same time, and one is way less staff intensive than the other. So I certainly wouldn't propose that approach unless I felt like we could accommodate that, and I think we can. If we start trying to do all those other stations on top of that, then I think we're talking about maxing out our bandwidth with our existing staff. And again, accounting for the expenses of the operating costs and the personnel in our projected revenue over the next few years. We have those numbers based on the direction that the board gave me at the planning workshop. And using those numbers, it works. It doesn't let that reserve balance grow at quite as quick a rate, but it does put the services in place and still yield some growth.
I feel like this is a really huge decision,
Sure.
and a lot of responsibility put on us. And, you know, I really want to make sure that we talk it through and think it through, because the community is counting on us. And we definitely want to go in the right direction, and I don't want to feel rushed into something, just because we feel like we need to get it done. But I really feel personally that I'm not ready to make any decisions on this yet. I just need some more time to review and process and even have conversations.
Can we add this to the agenda for the budget meeting that we've got coming up next week?
Yes, as long as we get it on there before 5 o'clock tomorrow, we can add it. Just, if you give me direction what you want to talk about. Technically, that's a workshop. It's not an action meeting. I'll have to,
The agenda's already been certified and posted.
but we can pull it down.
We can, yes, but it is a workshop and that's.
I would just
that's
want to
of a
touch
different
base with
nature.
Ken to confirm that it's okay to put, I mean, if you're considering action, you're wanting to consider action next week, I just
Or
need
at
to
least discussion and maybe action.
I think we can discuss under the agenda, we just can't do an action.
Yeah.
So we would have to push the decision until the
The
next
June
month.
meeting. Yeah. Again, no pressure from me because I have no issue telling people, okay, we're in a holding pattern until you hear from me. But, we have construction management and architect costs with Eagle Mountain North every week. There's meeting costs that we're going to incur and start getting a pay app for every month. So, we're fine for now because those are not going to be giant numbers. But if we prolong this much beyond a couple of months, then we're going to need to press the pause button on the design meetings and just hold until the board makes a funding decision. And again, your staff is ready to go to work at whatever speed and level you're asking for. I just need to look out for their well-being and make sure we're not putting too much on all of us at one time.
Okay. Okay, so have we exhausted item C?
I think essentially you're tabling this item is what I would say you're voting to do, just to table it
It
for
says
further discussion.
discussion and or action, so it's not required that there's a motion.
Okay.
Okay.
Very good.
We'll move on to item 12, briefing items. A, the FY '27 budget workshop scheduled for May 19th.
Correct. Thank you, Mr. President. So the May 19th meeting was canceled due to inclement weather in the area. We will have dinner provided for you at 5 p.m. next Tuesday night. These are the high-level items we'll be discussing. We'll be talking about some of those FY '26 accomplishments, what we've gotten done over the last 9.5 months. We'll go through the Fitch study recommendations again. All of these items were already in the April meeting. It wasn't the May 19th we canceled, it was the April one. Some of this is going to be revisiting, which I think probably just feeds into the discussion about the fire stations. So we'll move forward with that.
Well, and, I guess since that is part of the agenda for next week, that proposed operating budget, if we elect to do some of the financing, we'll be able to still discuss it next week.
Sure.
So
Yeah, it's all in
yeah,
there.
so it's in there. So we'll be able to discuss it just like what we were planning to do.
Yes.
Okay.
And in fact, I don't think we have to add anything
That's
to the
right.
agenda. I think these 6 topics will cover everything we've discussed. Keeping in mind, so part of this presentation, and again, I will send that presentation out to you ahead of time. I did not do agenda briefings for this. You're just going to get the presentation with all the information in it for a workshop. The agenda briefing process is pretty cumbersome, and if I tried to do it on all of this, it would be substantial. And the PowerPoint's over 90 slides long, so and it's detailed by line item what those expenses are for. But we're seeking the board's input. I'm bringing you a balanced budget with a surplus. I additions, subtractions from that at the board's discretion, what you'd like to see. I'm certain as we get closer to getting final tax roll, 2 or 3 more months of sales tax data under our belt to evaluate our projections for next year, that we may see some minor tweaks to those numbers. I'm interested to see what the real impact of the lakeside ad valorem is to our total tax revenue. We have estimations based on property values, but I'm anxious to see what those real numbers are, and we hope to have those soon. And part of the reason why you did not get this presentation ahead of time is we have been waiting on TAD to provide us the preliminary assessed values so that we could give you more real-time data. And we waited all the way up to this afternoon until we had to just finalize this and finish it, and didn't get to put that in there for you because we still haven't received it. So, but this will be the budget workshop for next Tuesday.
Okay, item B, Board of Commissioners meetings and executive session policy as it pertains to the Board of Commissioners.
This is a new policy that we have that we're gonna push out. Similar to a couple months ago, I brought the open records request, those policies, because they pertain to the board. This is the same thing. Very quickly, the policy, I'm gonna borrow this. Okay. You all got a copy of the policy? Were there any questions with it? No? Okay. So it ensures transparency, accountability, and that we're legal. We all know what the definition of a meeting and quorum is. A quorum is 3 of the 5 board members. So we need to be careful not to meet in threes.
Right.
Or text groups in threes, that sort of thing. Executive session, we know that those are for certain topics and we have to stay on those topics. Those are closed behind doors, meaning not open to the public. So what is discussed in those meetings needs to stay in those meetings. There are 3 different types of board meetings. So we've got regular meetings, which is what we're doing now. Special meetings, which is the meetings that we hold during budget season. And any other meeting that you would, impromptu meeting that you would want to call. And then emergency meetings. I can't give you an example of what, maybe Chief Shelley can, of what an emergency meeting might be for the ESD.
If we had a disaster situation where one of our stations was knocked out of service,
Okay.
and we needed to make some emergency requests for repairs, things like that couldn't really afford to wait 3 or 4 weeks to the next board meeting, we might call an emergency session like that. If we were trying to hit a timeline on a financing plan, what have you, to make sure that things were done in the right order, in the event something like that happened, even possibly we could call an emergency meeting. And I think what it really affects, if I remember right, is like the posting requirements. It shortens those posting requirements depending on the type of meeting.
They can be held virtually. They don't have to be held in person. So that's helpful too. Procedures, we follow Robert's Rules of Order. The agenda can be done in any format that we choose. That just needs to be done by vote. Robert Rules of Order. This talks about public participation. So right now it says that we allow 3 minutes for each speaker. That can be changed. That's up to y'all, but I don't recall a scenario or a meeting where anybody needed to go over 3 minutes. We need to be careful. There have been a couple of instances where people got up to speak, but they didn't sign in. That is part of open records. We have to keep that documented. Again, executive session, and this just a little bit more detail. You can discuss personnel matters, consultation with legal counsel, property purchases, security matters, economic development. Again, it's up to you who's involved in those meetings. That could be an assistant chief, that could be Jen, that could be anybody. But you designate that. again, they need to be kept confidential. And this goes into records retention and recording of the minutes. And this is in the slideshow I sent earlier. But that's it. I mean, it's just a brief
Okay.
rundown of the policy, and I'm sure that we will be bringing more. Chief Brown and I are working, well, I had to take a step back to do Tyler, but we're working on getting policies ready to be pushed out to staff.
Thank you for doing that, it looks
Yeah.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry?
I said, we've been needing these.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, item C, fire operations update.
Chief Mays,
Good work.
Yeah.
that's unacceptable. You want the controller?
Good evening, good evening.
You want the controller, or you want me to drive for you?
I'll let you drive, I'll go through this.
Okay.
Alrighty, so just kind of an update real quick on apparatus. So the team is working really hard to get all the new graphics on the apparatus. And so the tanker that we got from Everman, it has been graphicked and it is got hose on it. And either tomorrow or sometime this week, it will become the new engine 770 in Rendon. And so the Saginaw tanker that we got, it has also been wrapped. And as equipment kind of comes in, we're shuttling around, but we're hopefully by the end of next week, we will have that unit ready to go, and it will go to Briar. And that'll be the vehicle in Briar until the new one arrives in at the end of the year. So what all that really kind of means is that we're getting some reserves apparatus in place. And so the Briar tender that's there, tender engine, it's going to go, it'll get graphicked, and then it'll be a really good reserve for us to do, like I said, either an engine or a tender. We have the Haslett brush truck that when they got the new one, we took the old one, took it down to Wildfire, spent some money on that, got it freshened up. And so it's been logoed, so we now have a healthy reserve brush truck. The end goal is going to be to make sure that we have an engine, a tender, a brush truck, and an ambulance that's fully stocked, ready to go in case we need to upstaff during a bad weather event. So we're just not quite there yet, but we're a lot closer than we have been. And so I kind of reflect as Chief says, hey, I need your report, I give it to him. Well, every day there's a new change, right? And so I don't want you to think that what I write and I tell you, well, that ain't what you wrote, Chief. That's because we're moving at the speed of light, getting things done, right? So anyway, I have to kind of double check what I wrote and to where we're at. Let's see, still working on radios. That's been the devil for me, but we're progressing through it. Like I said, down at the Rendon station, that presented a couple challenges with this on getting the signal inside of the station. So we're still using their low band radio and not the fancy 800 to get alerted. So working through some of those challenges, no big deal. It's a thing called a BDA, a bidirectional antenna. And that's where some little antennas get put inside the building that leads to one on the outside, and that will solve our problems. These are things that have to go in schools, any of the large buildings anymore, the head-up block, the window, the glass, those kind of things really just block that signal. So working through that. There's going to be one day when I won't say this, but I'm happy to say it, 'cause at our Chiefs meetings, it's always, are we fully staffed or not? And so I'm happy to say we're fully staffed, and so I don't know if Alicia has any comments she would want to make, but the Fort Worth Promotion T-shirt online sales is going fine. Anything you want to say about that?
They're doing really good. Going very well. We've sold quite a few.
Okay, very good. Let's see, technology. Just still chasing that. A lot of this is just out of our control. Chief Ballou has to say, hey, AT&T, I need fiber over here, I need this, and we're at their mercy to get all of that kind of stuff. Not power, man, we're great at power. But So just we're working through that. The computers that we'll put into the fire trucks, again, that'll allow us to hit responding on scene. We'll have better, quicker, accurate time. So those computers are getting updated to be able to be installed. So hopefully we can get those sooner. Just continuing on with our first due records management system, and as we learn more about it and parameters and things that Chief needs, that we hear from y'all and building it. So it's just work in progress, y'all. Lexipol's fine. Want to say that training. So engine 370, 570 went to Parker County and did a mid-rise training, and it's funny, we'll get those questions of there's not high rises in the county, right? So a mid-rise, a high rise is 75 feet or 7 stories or taller, essentially. So a mid-rise is kind of that 4 to 7, and that's what you see, the little motels that are everywhere. So, it presents a different tactical challenge for us, and so we appreciate Parker County coming out there and helping us figure out how it's going to best work in our region so we can work together. So that's always good news. And then, as Ms. Becker brought up, I added in PR events, and so she explained to you about the Kids for EKG. So again, thank you for involving us. I know that we want to be a good community partner, and anything that I can get on Facebook positively is something that we're after. So we do appreciate you including us in that great event. Also, there was up in Eagle Mountain, they taught a CPR class to the resort. They had asked for that. It's something they'd always kind of done, my understanding, through Eagle Mountain, and so they'd asked if the ESD would do it, and the answer was of course. So that was a pretty successful event. And then down at Rendon, they did a PR event at Tarver Rendon Elementary School. So again, we try to encourage the people to take some pictures, send it to us, go through the proper channels, and let's just promote positivity. So thank you for.
Chief Hayes?
Yes.
Wasn't there also, we had a career day today?
Oh.
Eagle Heights Elementary.
Oh.
And it was an ASL, and it was Medic 321 out of Lake Worth participated with us. So it was great. They did pre-K through 4th grade today. They were
Cool.
there for 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah.
And we appreciate their guys showing up and participating with us.
Good
So
stuff.
just getting them in front of people also, because Eagle Heights does sit in the county. So this was their first interface with that group today. So
I saw a video online of firemen in full gear, and they were crawling around children, just so children, if they're in a fire, they wouldn't be scared when they saw someone coming with all this gear, just what it looks like and what they're doing, et cetera. I thought that was a great program as well.
Yes. I just want to capitalize. They had a fire yesterday in Whiskey Flats, and it was an RV. And some of us may say it's just an RV. Well, that's the same $1 million mansion to the $1 million people, right? It's what they have. It's all they got. And time matters. It's not just a camper. This is just another testament to it was 3/4 of a mile from the fire station. They got there, got water on the fire, and contained it to only one camper. And that's important. And there's no disrespect to before. It's just the power of response time, right?
Right.
And so had that not have been station have been there, that fire just would progress. And as we just see in the county, it catches other things on fire. So again, our partner showed up, helped us do it all, but it is just a testament to having a station in location. There's no substitute for time, number of people that show up, and a right amount of water, right? So we are doing positive things, and I just wanted to share that other little story with you. So,
Well, thank you.
Okay.
any questions for me?
Nope. Thank you, Chief.
All right.
Thank you.
Now we get to pick on Chief Brown for an EMS update.
Help him up.
I think I'm more spry than you, young man.
All right, how are y'all this evening?
Good.
Just a few items that we've got this evening. So one of the things in our training regimen for all of our paramedics is a program that we call FTO for our paramedics, field training for them. So to make that happen, we identify a person within our organization that will be our field training officers. So myself and Chief Lawrence met with 6 of our personnel that we've assigned those duties for to train our people today and for the future. We had a great meeting yesterday. 6 folks that we've chosen, they're highly capable and they're really, really enthused about what opportunities they're going to have within the organization. Very, very happy with that. A lot of positives going forward from the training side, getting our people the education that they need, and that kind of ties in with. So once we train these folks on the EMS side, they meet with our medical director, Dr. Bertrand. So the purpose of that during that field training program is that when they meet with the medical director, they're gonna meet or exceed all of his expectations because we work underneath his license, right? He says that we can put a Band-Aid on. He says that we can intubate people. We follow under all of his direction. So we've got a great process going on with that. It's just in its infancy. We're getting the guys trained up, and it's pretty exciting so far. Chief Mays brought up a while ago I've got in here rebranding of our ambulances, and that's what we're doing with these ambulances that we have so far. We've got 6 ambulances now that have all of our graphics on. We've got 2 additional ambulances at 2 different locations getting the graphics put on. By the end of the month, we should have all of our ambulances with Tarrant County ESD marked proudly on all of them. Cool. So a lot of work going into that. Some folks, so the Eagle Mountain ambulances as a part, they were white with graphics on them, right? The Redden ambulances were red, which is great. We pulled the old stickers off and put new stickers on the Redden ambulances, so it doesn't take as long, it doesn't cost as much. Eagle Mountain ambulances are a completely different story. They wrap the entire box, they wrap the entire chassis, and there's just a ton of work that goes into it. So the company that we're using for that's done a great job for us, so been real happy with that. One of the things that Chief had mentioned earlier, been working with EMS-MC, which is our EMS billing company. A lot of work has gone into that from their side. We're supporting them with that. So one of the things that I've told you before, they're tasked with, first things they have to do is get us situated with Medicare and Medicaid. We have presented them, gave them all of the paperwork that they need to be successful with that. But I think I told you last month, Medicare takes about 60 days. No, Medicaid takes about 60 days. Medicare is 90, 120 for them to get that in. So from the billing side with EMS-MC, we're looking at beginning that process. What they're telling me is probably the first or second week in June. What they can do is they will back bill for everything that we've done from April 1st. So there's no loss in that. It's just the time frames associated with getting through and jumping through all the hoops that we need on the billing side. Another thing that we're working with them on, and Chief had brought it up as well, is the fire billing process. What we're able to do with them, depending on insurance providers that are out there, let's say your car insurance. If there's a car fire, we get there and put the fire out. There is a part in some insurance that we can bill for the services that we provided. Extrication on a car wreck is another one. That's one of the big ones on the provider side. Hazmat response. Say you got a tanker going down the roadway, they overturn, spill product all over the roadway. There's a lot of man-hour and equipment that goes into helping manage and mitigate that particular emergency. So we're able to recoup some of our costs through the insurance arm of these folks. So that's just some of the stuff that we've got going on right now. Pretty short and sweet. I don't talk as much as him. Y'all have any questions for me?
Nope.
All right, well, good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
So just a quick update on facilities. The Eagle Mountain Station, very minor remodeling. I shared earlier, we opened up the wall between the kitchen and the old training room. The new larger capacity septic tank has been set. They're waiting on it to dry out a little bit so they can finish the tie-in and backfill all the dirt. Station 370 in Briar, the electric work has been completed. They're waiting to reset the air conditioner for the upstairs area where the captain's dorm and office is. The bathroom up there has been finished. Drainage work, I was out there at lunchtime today and the concrete work for the drainage, the last of the concrete was installed today, so that's just setting up, and they'll be tearing down forms and cleaning up from that. We purchased from Rendon a generator as part of what we paid them that is going to be relocated to Briar to provide backup power there. So we're excited to get that done soon. Had some air conditioning repairs that had to be done at Whiskey Flats, and finally the equipment for our station alerting has arrived out there and is being installed. So we're excited about that. The team has been living off of their handheld radios night and day since they moved in December. So to finally have that alerting system with speakers and lights in the building that will alert them when there's an emergency, that's huge for us. We had to rent the Rendon building one additional month due to a small delay getting in our new building. However, as I said, we moved in on Thursday. We have a temporary certificate of occupancy that's good till the end of this month will be done. The permanent stairs for the bridge between the two buildings and the hood system to go over the stove and the stainless steel wrap that goes on the wall around the stove to protect those walls. All of that will be going in the next couple of weeks, and that phase one will be wrapped up at that point. So excited about that. Can't wait to take you down there and let you see that building. It's beautiful. I'm very happy with the way it turned out. And with that, that's the end of briefing items, other than I did want to share one annexation we received from the city of Fort Worth. They are annexing just shy of 53 acres, I-30 south of Chapin Road and east of Walsh Ranch. That will all be addressed. It was addressed tonight at 6 o'clock. So nothing like a timely notice.
I mean, is there commercial on that? Is that?
It's a raw piece of land.
Okay. Do they have better services than we do there?
Yes. There is a fire station in the Walsh Ranch neighborhood, which is directly adjacent to where this is. So, yeah, Fire Station 43 is right there.
Okay.
Yep.
Very good.
Yes.
Okay, then I will take us into executive session under 551.071 at 8:21 p.m. Yes. Are we recording still? Okay, I'm going to call this session of the Tarrant County Emergency Services District back into session out of executive session at 9:02 PM.
And Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to proceed as deliberated, to authorize you to proceed as deliberated with our attorney, Ken Campbell.
Okay? Do I have a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. I am now going to take this, the Tarrant County Emergency Services District, number one, back into executive session under 551.074 at 9:03 PM. Okay, I am bringing the Tarrant County Emergency Services District Number 1 back into session after a 551.074 discussion. There is no action to be taken, and I am going to take Tarrant County Emergency Services District Number 1 back into executive session under 551.071 at 9:16 p.m. we still recording?
No, she just turned the mics back on.
Oh, I meant the camera.
Oh, no.
Oh,
So it, on the report, it just shows this
oh,
until,
okay. So now we're recording again. Okay, I'm going to call this session of Tarrant County ESD number 1 back into session at 9:50 p.m.
Okay, we make a motion that we authorize President Davis, Commissioner High School, and Attorney Ken Campbell to proceed as deliberated.
Second.
All in favor? I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're adjourned.
Thank you.